Alien Beastwoman stalked my campfire and whispered she'd chosen me. Part 1. The Silent Watcher. The forest world was quiet at night, but it was not the kind of quiet that brought peace. It was the kind of quiet that made every sound louder, every crack of a branch sharper, every breath more noticeable. Ryan sat near the campfire, staring into the flames as they flickered and swayed. He had traveled alone for many months, carrying only his pack, his tools, and his stubborn will to keep moving forward. Humans had tried to settle this world before, but none had lasted. The soil was rich, the rivers clear, yet the wilds held dangers too great for fragile outposts. Ryan was here not for farming or trade, but for something harder to explain. He wanted to test himself, to see if a man could stand against a world that did not want him. The fire popped and sent sparks up into the night air. Ryan listened closely. Beyond the circle of light, the trees seemed to whisper to each other. The shadows shifted as if they had a life of their own. He had the feeling once again that he was not alone. It was not just instinct, it was certainty. For the past 3 nights, something had been out there. It was not the usual predator. He had seen the signs of hunters before. Glowing eyes in the dark, soft growls carried by the wind, claw marks on tree bark. This was different. This presence did not rush him, did not leap from the dark, did not roar. It stayed just out of sight, pacing, waiting. Sometimes he caught a glimpse of movement between the trunks. Sometimes only silence pressed against him like a weight. Ryan tightened his grip on the wooden spear he had carved earlier that day. The spear would not stop one of the great beasts of this world, but it gave him something to hold on to, something to remind him he would not die without a fight. His heart beat faster. He forced himself to breathe slow. Fear was natural, but fear could be used. Fear sharpened the senses. The forest answered with a low rustle. A branch bent as if under the weight of something heavy. Ryan's eyes darted to the spot, but the firelight did not reach far enough. He leaned forward, straining to see, but there was only darkness. Another sound, this one behind him. He spun, raising the spear, but again saw nothing. His skin prickled. Whoever or whatever it was fast, circling him, testing him, just as he had feared. He remembered the stories told by other explorers before they gave up this world. Some said creatures lived here that were neither beast nor person, but something in between. They said these beings were hunters of the night, watching their prey for days before striking. Ryan had never believed such tales, but now they pressed hard into his mind. Still, the Watcher did not attack. That made him wonder. If it wanted him dead, why wait? Why let him build fire and shelter? Why follow him night after night? It was as if the forest itself had chosen to place a judge before him, a presence to see what he would do. The fire crackled. He reached into his pack, pulled out a strip of dried meat, and laid it on a flat rock at the edge of the firelight. His hands did not shake, though he felt his pulse in his ears. He sat back, resting the spear against his knee, and spoke softly, though he did not know if the Watcher understood any words at all. "I know you are out there," he said. "If you want food, take it. If you want a fight, you will have one. But if you only want to watch, then keep watching. I will not run." His voice was calm, but it carried weight. The sound faded into the trees. He did not expect an answer, yet something shifted in the air. The forest grew even stiller, as if listening. Minutes passed. The firewood settled, releasing another burst of sparks. The meat remained untouched. Ryan wondered if the Watcher had moved away. Then, just as he began to relax, he saw it. At the very edge of the firelight, 2 eyes gleamed. They reflected the flames in a way no animal eyes had before. They were not wild and empty, but sharp and knowing. They studied him as much as he studied them. His grip on the spear tightened, but he did not lift it. He understood, without knowing why, that raising it now would break something important. The eyes blinked once, slowly, then vanished back into the dark. A soft sound followed, not a growl, not a hiss, but something like a breath, almost human, almost not. Then silence again. Ryan sat back, his body tense, his mind racing. The Watcher had shown itself and chosen not to strike. That meant something. It meant there was more to this than simple hunting. He stayed awake long into the night, the fire burning low, listening for every sound. Once or twice he thought he heard footsteps on soft soil, heavier than any small creature, but careful, deliberate. He almost spoke again, but held his tongue. He sensed that words would matter later, not now. For now, he needed only patience. When dawn came, the Watcher was gone. Birds with bright feathers darted between branches, calling to one another. The forest seemed alive in a different way under the sun. Rian left the strip of meat where it was. It remained untouched. He gathered his tools, packed his bag, and prepared to move deeper into the wilds. Yet even in daylight he felt the same presence somewhere out there following him, a shadow on his steps waiting for the next night. That evening, when the fire was lit again and the forest returned to silence, he knew the Watcher would come. He knew the eyes would glow once more at the edge of the light. And he knew that his lonely journey on this world had just changed forever. This was not the silence of being alone. This was the silence of being watched, measured, and perhaps chosen. The night stretched long. The fire flickered and Rian kept his gaze steady, waiting for the moment when the Watcher would step out of the dark. The first part of his trial had begun, to be continued. Alien Beastwoman stalked my campfire and whispered she'd chosen me. Part 2. The beast revealed. Ryan's second night after leaving the untouched strip of meat began with a sky painted in deep orange. The twin moons of the world rose one after another, spilling pale light across the endless trees. He gathered more wood, sharpened his spear again, and lit the fire earlier than usual. His heart carried an odd mix of fear and expectation. He had felt the Watcher's presence all day, even while the sun was high. Now, with the forest returning to shadow, he knew the eyes would return. The first few hours passed quietly. The forest gave its usual calls. Strange birds, insects that hummed like wires, leaves shifting as unseen creatures scurried. But then the air shifted, the same way it had before. The trees grew still. The soft sounds of night dulled, leaving a heavy silence around the fire. Ryan did not need to look far. He already knew. She was here again. He set another strip of food near the edge of the light, then leaned back, waiting. His hand rested on the spear but did not raise it. Patience had become his greatest weapon. He whispered again, more to test the silence than to send a message. I know you are close. If you wish to show yourself, I will not strike first. The forest gave no reply, but minutes later the glow returned, two eyes bright and strange, reflecting both the fire and the moons above. They stayed at the edge longer than before, unblinking. Then slowly they moved forward. Rian's breath caught. Out of the dark stepped the figure. At first glance she looked like one of the great predators of the wilds, tall and broad-shouldered, covered partly in fur that shimmered faintly under the light. But her stance was upright. Her movements carried more than instinct. She walked like someone who had chosen each step carefully. Rian noticed details in flashes. Long claws, sharp and dangerous, yet held low, not raised. A body shaped for strength, yet not lacking in balance. A face part animal, part human. Eyes filled with a strange intelligence. She was no mindless beast. She was something else. The firelight painted her in shades of gold and shadow. For a long moment, neither moved. Ryan's heart pounded, but he held still. Then she lowered herself, crouching across from him, just outside the strongest glow of the flames. Her eyes stayed locked on his. Ryan reached slowly for the strip of food on the rock and slid it closer toward her. She tilted her head, watching, then stretched her arm forward. Claws gleamed as she grasped the meat with surprising care. She sniffed it, then ate, chewing slowly. When she finished, she did not leave. She stayed crouched, staring at him. The fire cracked between them, sending shadows up their faces. Ryan felt his throat dry, yet curiosity pushed him to speak. Do you understand me? He asked softly. For a while there was only silence. Then came a sound. It was not a growl, not a roar, but a word. A broken word forced through a throat unused to shaping human speech. Man, she said. Her voice was rough, low, but clear enough. Rian blinked. The word hit him harder than any claw could. She had spoken. She knew. Yes, he said carefully. He touched his chest. I am man, Rian. She tilted her head again, repeating with difficulty. Rian. He nodded quickly. Yes, Ryan. She tapped her own chest with one claw, making a sound that carried her name. It was not easy for him to catch, a mix of growl and syllable, but he tried to repeat it. She gave a small nod, a sign of approval. They sat there, two beings from different worlds, sharing firelight and simple words. The forest for once felt less threatening. Hours passed as they exchanged gestures. Ryan pointed at the fire, saying the word. She repeated, her voice rough but steady. He pointed at the sky, naming the moons, the trees, the spear. She copied as best she could. She even tried to teach him her words, sounds deep and strange, but he attempted them anyway. Sometimes she made a sound like laughter at his clumsy tongue. When the fire burned low, she did not vanish into the dark as before. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes reflecting the last embers. Ryan felt a chill run through him, not of fear but of wonder. This creature, who could crush him with one swipe, sat calmly across from him, learning his words, testing his patience, watching him with something beyond hunger. At last, as dawn painted the sky pale, she rose to leave. She gave him one last long look, then turned and walked back into the forest. Ryan watched until she disappeared. When she was gone, he sat back, his mind spinning. The stories told by explorers had spoken of beasts that stalked and killed, not of creatures that spoke, learned, and chose to stay by the fire. This was not simple survival. This was the beginning of something else. Ryan lay down at last, closing his eyes, though his thoughts refused to rest. He felt it clear as day. He was no longer alone on this world. Something had shifted, and his lonely journey had become a path shared, though he did not yet know where it would lead, and he knew one thing for certain. The Watcher had revealed herself. She had spoken his name, and the next night she would come again, to be continued. Alien Beastwoman stalked my campfire, and whispered she'd chosen me. Part 3. The Whispered Choice. The third night came with a heavy sky. Thick clouds covered the moons, and the forest was darker than before. Ryan's fire was the only light in the wide stretch of trees. He had prepared wood and food again, though his thoughts were not on survival alone. They were on her. She had shown herself, spoken his name, and even stayed until dawn. Now he could not deny the truth. This was no animal passing through. This was someone who had chosen to sit at his fire, someone who had tested his patience and found it worth staying. Ryan sat cross-legged near the flames, the spear resting across his lap. The heat licked at his skin, but the rest of him felt cold. He knew she would come again. He also knew something was about to change. The forest hushed as it had before. The calls of the night creatures faded, as though they too were watching. Then, from the shadows, her shape emerged. She was taller than he remembered, the firelight painting her fur and skin in shades of copper. Her claws gleamed, but they hung relaxed at her sides. Her eyes, sharp and bright, fixed on him with focus that left no room for doubt. She stepped closer than before, into the full glow of the fire. The sight of her sent a chill through him. Her face, part beast and part human, carried an expression he could not read. Not anger, not hunger, but something else. Ryan slid a strip of food forward again, but this time she did not take it. She crouched directly across from him, her gaze steady. For a long while, neither spoke. The fire cracked and sent sparks upward, filling the silence. At last, she leaned closer. Her voice was rough, almost like a growl forced into shape, but it was still a voice. "Chosen," she said. Ryan blinked. "Chosen?" She nodded, tapping her chest, then pointing at him. Her claws nearly touched his shirt before pulling back. Again she spoke, clearer this time. "I choose." The word settled heavy between them. Ryan did not understand at first. Was it a claim? A warning? His mind raced. But her eyes did not carry threat. They carried something more like decision, like certainty. "Why?" he asked softly, her head tilted. She struggled with words, growls slipping between syllables, but the meaning came through. Not prey, not enemy, strong, fireheart. "I see." She touched her chest again, then lowered her hand. Her breathing was steady, but her gaze never left his. Ryan realized she was not speaking of a hunt. She was speaking of something deeper. Her kind did not simply take companions for survival. They chose them. And she had chosen him. Ryan's throat felt dry. He had no guide for this moment. No human had written rules for when a beastwoman of another world declared a choice. He only knew his instincts. He met her gaze and kept his voice calm. "I am no beast like you. I'm only a man. Why would you choose me?" Her lips curled in something between a smile and a snarl. "Man weak. But not you. You stand, you stay. Fire does not break. I want that." The weight of her words struck him. She had seen him as more than fragile flesh. She had seen the stubbornness that kept him alive when others fled. To her, that mattered more than claws or strength. Ryan leaned forward slightly, careful not to seem aggressive. "If you choose me, what does that mean?" She paused, searching for words. Her voice was rough but steady. "Bond, protect, share, hunt, walk same path. No leave." The meaning was clear enough. It was not a threat. It was a vow. She was offering partnership. Ryan sat back, the fire crackling between them. His chest tightened. not with fear but with the weight of choice. He could walk away, deny her, and perhaps she would vanish back into the wilds. But he felt deep down that refusing would close a door forever. He studied her again. Her claws could end his life in a breath, yet they rested calmly on her knees. Her eyes held no hunger, only certainty. She had whispered her choice, and in doing so, she had given him a chance at something greater than survival. He let out a slow breath. Then I will not run. If you choose me, I will stand with you. Her eyes narrowed, glowing faintly as if the firelight itself had settled inside them. She leaned even closer, her voice lowering to a whisper that brushed the air between them. Ryan, mine. The words were simple, but they carried power. She had claimed him not as prey, not as enemy, but as chosen companion. For a moment, silence held them both. Then she sat back calmer, as though the bond was sealed. She reached toward the flames, holding her hand near the heat but not touching. She spoke again, softer now. Fire, share, we share. Ryan nodded, his heart still racing. He felt the truth of it. The fire was no longer his alone. They spent the rest of the night in that shared silence. She asked for more words, pointing at objects, repeating them. He tried to learn her names for things as well. Slowly, step by step, their languages bridged. But beneath the lessons was a deeper understanding. When dawn came, she rose, her tall figure outlined against the pale sky. She gave him one last long look, then vanished into the forest. But this time Ryan did not feel she had left him. She had chosen him, and he felt sure she would return. As he sat alone by the dying fire, Ryan thought of the bond she had offered. He did not yet know the full weight of what it meant, but he knew one thing with certainty. His life on this world was no longer only about proving himself. It was now tied to hers. And in the quiet of the morning, with the forest slowly waking, Ryan whispered back into the empty air. I choose too. To be continued. Alien Beastwoman stalked my campfire and whispered she'd chosen me. Part 4, Trial by the Wilds. The forest grew restless after the night of her choice. Ryan could feel it in the air, like pressure before a storm. Every step he took during the day carried the sense that something was watching, not just her but others. He did not yet know if they were friend or foe. By evening he had built another fire, larger this time, and stacked extra wood nearby. He knew she would come again. True enough, when the night grew thick, she appeared at the edge of the light. This time, however, her movements were different. She walked quickly, her eyes sharp, her body tense. When she crouched across from him, she wasted no time. Danger, she said in her rough voice. She pointed into the dark trees. Pack hunt, smell you? Smell me. Ryan understood at once. Predators. He had heard them before. Creatures that moved in groups, tearing prey apart with fangs like knives. Alone he might not survive. With her there was a chance. He nodded, gripping his spear. Then we faced them together. Her eyes glowed at his words. She gave a short sound, half growl, half laugh, then rose to her full height. Her claws extended, her body shifting into readiness. The first growl came from the east, then another from the west. Shadows moved between the trees, low and fast. The pack was circling, much like she once had. But these did not wait to test. These came to kill. Ryan's fire became the center of a storm. The first beast lunged from the dark, a blur of fur and teeth. Ryan thrust his spear forward, catching it in the shoulder and pushing it back. Before it could recover, she was there, striking with one sweep of her claws. The beast fell, its body torn, but more came. 3 at once leapt from the trees. Ryan dodged one, slamming the butt of his spear into its snout, while she grabbed another mid-leap, twisting and hurling it aside with raw power. The third beast circled, snapping its jaws, but Ryan's firelight kept it cautious. The battle raged around the campfire, each moment a test of trust. Ryan fought with speed and cunning, using firebrands from the flames as weapons, jabbing and swinging to drive the pack back. She fought with strength and instinct, her roars shaking the forest as she met the beasts head-on. Once one of the predators broke past her and lunged at Ryan's back. She saw it first and slammed into it before it could reach him, saving his life. Another time, when she was caught beneath 2 snapping jaws, Ryan leapt forward with a burning branch, driving the beasts away long enough for her to rise. By the time dawn's first light touched the sky, the pack had broken. The survivors fled into the trees, leaving behind their fallen. Ryan dropped to his knees, exhausted, sweat and dirt streaking his face. She stood over him, her chest heaving, her claws red but her eyes bright with victory. For the first time, she touched his shoulder. Not a push, not a strike, but a gesture of respect. "Strong," she said simply. Ryan managed a tired smile. "We are strong together." She gave a low sound of agreement. Then she crouched, pointing at the fallen beasts. "Clan smell." "Clan come soon," Ryan frowned. He remembered her words. She had a people, a clan. If they were near, they might not welcome him as she had. The next days proved her warning true. Signs of movement appeared in the forest. Broken branches, strange marks, distant calls that echoed like horns. Ryan knew they were being watched, just as he had been before. One night, storms swept across the land. Rain poured down, soaking their fire until it hissed and died. Thunder rolled through the trees, shaking the ground. They built shelter together beneath thick roots of a massive fallen tree. Inside the small space, Ryan worked with rope and cloth to keep water out. She gathered heavy stones to block the wind. It was strange, almost peaceful, working side by side while the storm raged. She watched him tie knots with steady hands, then copied his movements with her claws. Clumsy at first, but learning fast. When lightning split the sky and the storm threatened to tear the forest apart, they held their ground together. In that moment, Ryan felt the bond grow deeper. It was not just fire they shared now. It was survival itself, through storm and darkness. But the true trial came when her clan arrived. It was on the 5th night after the storm. Ryan and she were sitting near their fire again, sharing food and words when shadows appeared all around them. Dozens of eyes glowed in the dark. Figures stepped forward, tall and broad like her, but different. Their fur was marked with scars, their claws sharper, their stares filled with suspicion. They surrounded the fire, growling in low voices. One stepped forward, larger than the rest, his presence heavy with command. He looked at Ryan as if at an insect. His words were harsh, rolling like thunder. Ryan could not understand, but she stood at once, facing the leader. Their voices clashed in a storm of growls and words. She pointed at Ryan, then at herself. She spoke the word she had struggled with before. "Chosen." The clan erupted in growls. Some laughed, others shouted. The leader bared his fangs and stepped closer, pointing a claw at Ryan as if to strike him down. But she blocked his path, standing tall. Her eyes blazed with fire, her claws ready. She growled a single word with such force that even Ryan understood its meaning. "No." The standoff burned like the fire between them. Ryan felt his heart hammering. He could not understand all that was said, but he knew enough. She had declared her choice before her clan, and now the trial was not only survival in the forest, it was survival against those who would take that choice from her. Ryan rose slowly, holding his spear steady. He was no match for the clan, but he would not step back. He had given his word to stand with her, and he meant it. The leader snarled, his muscles tense, but something in Ryan's eyes, or perhaps in hers, made him pause. For a long moment, no one moved. The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the air. At last, the leader gave a sharp bark. The clan backed away, fading into the trees, though their growls echoed like warning. The leader gave her one last glare, then vanished into the night. Silence returned. She turned back to Ryan, her shoulders heavy, her breathing slow. She sat near the fire once more, her eyes softer than he had ever seen them. "Danger not gone," she said. "But you stand. With me, always." Ryan nodded, lowering his spear. Always. The forest was not finished testing them. But they had faced the wilds, the storm, and even her clan's anger. Their bond had been forged not in comfort but in fire and trial, and Ryan knew as he looked at her across the flames that the greatest test was still to come, to be continued. Alien Beastwoman stalked my campfire and whispered she'd chosen me. Part 5, Fire of Companionship. The forest was uneasy after the clan's visit. Even the smallest creatures moved differently, rushing through the undergrowth as if sensing conflict in the air. Ryan could not shake the weight of what had happened. Her clan had seen him and they had not accepted him. She had stood between him and their leader, declaring him as chosen, but he knew that declaration had not ended the matter. The next days were tense. At night they still shared the fire, but she kept her ears sharp and her claws ready. She listened for sounds that he could not hear, her gaze shifting often toward the shadows. Ryan noticed that she slept less, as if preparing for a coming storm. One evening, while carving a fresh spear from a long branch, Ryan asked quietly, "They will come again, will they not?" She looked at him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Yes, clan not forget. Clan want break bond." The words struck him, heavy but honest. Ryan knew her clan would not accept a human easily. They saw him as weak, unworthy. To them, her choice was foolish. Yet she had stood firm. He admired that more than he could say. He set down the spear and met her gaze. "Then we will stand together when they come." Her eyes softened, though her body remained tense. She leaned slightly closer. "You always say stand." Why? Ryan thought about it. He looked at the fire, watching the flames twist and curl. "Because standing means I do not bow to fear. It means even if I fall as myself. Not as prey, not as someone broken, but as someone who stood." She studied him, her eyes reflecting the light. Slowly, she gave a sound almost like approval. "That is why I choose." The bond between them deepened in silence. They shared food, repaired their shelter, and trained side by side. She showed him how to move quietly through the forest, how to read claw marks on trees, how to listen to the wind for hidden dangers. In turn, he taught her knots, traps, and tricks of fire. Piece by piece, they learned each other's strengths. It was not long before the trial came. On the 7th night after the clan's first appearance, a deep call echoed through the forest. It was not the cry of beasts. It was a horn, loud and sharp, shaking the trees. She rose at once, her body tense. "Clan," she said. Shapes moved quickly among the trees more than before. The fire's glow caught the shine of many eyes. Ryan counted at least 20 figures. At their front was the same leader, towering and scarred, his gaze full of challenge. The circle closed around the campfire. Ryan felt his grip tighten on his spear. He glanced at her. She stood tall, her claws extended, her eyes burning bright. She did not step back. The leader spoke in his own tongue, voice deep and sharp. She answered with equal force. Their words clashed like weapons. Ryan could not follow all of it, but he caught one word repeated again and again. "Chosen." The leader growled louder, pointing at Ryan as if to demand his removal. She stepped between them, her voice rising. She pointed at Ryan, then struck her chest with her claw. "Chosen," she repeated firmly. The clan erupted in shouts and growls. Some called for her to return to them. Others mocked, laughing at the human. But the leader roared them into silence. He stepped forward, towering over her, his fangs bared. Then she did something Ryan did not expect. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and raised it high. Her voice rang through the forest. She spoke words that were not only for her clan, but for Rian too. "I choose fire. I choose man. He stand, I stand. No break." The flames lit her face, her eyes fierce with resolve. The leader snarled, then lunged. Ryan raised his spear, but she was faster. She clashed with her leader in a storm of claws and fire. Their battle tore through the camp, sparks flying, branches breaking. Ryan fought off others who tried to rush forward, striking with his spear and firebrands, refusing to step back. The fight was brutal. She was strong, but her leader was larger, older, hardened by many battles. Yet each time she was thrown down, she rose again. Each time his claws struck, she answered with fire and fury. And each time he tried to push toward Ryan, she blocked his path. Rian's chest burned with pride as he watched her. She was not only fighting for herself, she was fighting for him, for their bond. And he too fought for her, his heart steady, his arms unyielding. At last, the storm ended. She struck the leader with such force that he staggered back, claw marks burning bright across his chest. She stood over him, firebrand raised, her voice ringing out. "Chosen, mine." The clan froze. Silence filled the forest. The leader growled low, but he did not rise again. Slowly he turned and walked back into the trees. One by one, the rest followed, their eyes still glowing but their voices quiet. When the last shadow faded, the forest returned to stillness. The fire cracked softly, sending sparks upward. She dropped the firebrand, her chest heaving, her body marked with wounds, but her eyes bright with victory. Ryan rushed to her side, steadying her. "You are hurt." She shook her head. "Not broken." She looked at him, her gaze softening for the first time since the fight began. "You stand. You fight. You mine forever." Ryan smiled, his chest tight with both relief and awe. "And you are mine. Forever." They sat together by the fire, their bond sealed not only by words but by trial. The clan had seen, and though they did not accept, they could not deny. She had chosen him and he had chosen her, and nothing could break that. As dawn touched the sky, painting the trees in gold, Ryan felt a peace he had not known in years. He had come to this world to test himself, to see if he could stand against it. But in the end, he had found more than survival. He had found companionship, respect, and something like hope. The fire burned between them not as his fire or hers but as theirs, a symbol of two worlds joined by choice. And as the forest woke around them, Ryan knew that whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them side by side, not as hunter and prey, not as beast and man, but as chosen companions bound by fire. The end.